Hello, and welcome to our webinar on empowering change with data-driven insights. My name is Lawrence, Demand Generation Manager here at Cvent. And just to go over a few housekeeping items, we're all in Cvent webinar right now, our webinar platform. And you can join the chat on the right side of your screen, submit questions in the Q&A, and download this slide deck under resources, also there on the side of your screen there. So let's just start by all introducing ourselves in the chat. Let me know where you're joining us from. I'll start. I'll go into the chat right now, just like I say, on the right side of the screen. And there you go. So I am delighted today to be joined by Anita Howard, who is Strategy Director at ICE, who will be taking us through some of the most interesting insights that have come out of this year's corporate events benchmarking report. Thank you for joining us, Anita.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here. And obviously, thank you so much to Cvent for always supporting a very, very important piece of work for the corporate event industry, which I'll go on to in a few moments. So ladies and gentlemen, hello, and thank you for letting me barge into your afternoon. I hope you're having a lovely, lovely day. My name is Anita Howard. I'm the founder of ICE. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that I really love. And I know it sounds really sad, but this thing about data and how it can empower our events in real time to actually give great information to our business units. And this is all about, there's a little bit, we start off with a little bit of a moan, but we're going to go on to some really great stuff as we go along. So one of the things that we do at ICE, just to give you some background, basically we are a community just for in-house corporate event planners. We basically empower our community, and there's just over 3,000 people now, which is very exciting, to actually create meaningful conversations with each other and with our supporters. And it's all about collaboration. One of the things that we do is basically we have a flagship event, which is the ICE Awards and Conference, which is held in London, Leverkusen in Germany, and New York. And the very important thing about the community is this thing about providing research. And it's, as I said earlier on, for Cvent supporting benchmarking research for the last 6 years, we've been able to get real-time data to help corporate event planners to give a picture to their in-house stakeholders about what's going on within the events world. Now, look, I love this saying, don't give people what they want, give them something they never dreamed was possible. And I think all of us within events, whenever we do an event, we believe in just making sure that the best things are coming out, the most communication. And basically we bring everything together to make sure it's an amazing event. So we do that, and that's not a problem. I think it's wonderful. But one of the things I think we miss a big, big opportunity, and that is our data. So I consider data that we collect, and that's through our events, our feedback forms and things like that. Basically, I consider it our creative partner. We've been producing data for so long now. We talk about connection, we talk about creativity, but ask yourself, how often do you really use the data to shape your events? Not decorate them, but to shape them. And I think one of the things I always go, data is beautiful. I'm not here to make data beautiful, data sexy. I think it's all about using that data as your creative partner when you're developing your events. I just thought I'd share a quick slide here on one of the parts of the benchmarking research, and I'm sure we'll send you the link to access this research afterwards. But we asked basically, what were the priorities when organising events to corporate event planners? And as you can see, content creation, attendee engagement and budget management are really key things for us. But I think we as event planners, because we have this data available, why haven't we got technology up here? Why have we not, very sadly, got sustainability up there? So I think this whole thing, we have data that can help our businesses become better at what they do and make more connections with this live audience. You know, we always say that we've got time for doing agendas and everything else. Why are we not making time for the things that really matter, which is it helps shapes the business? If you had this data from your live event and you gave it to the actual, you know, sort of like business units and said, look, this is what we're finding out about our audience, that would be so valuable for your actual businesses. And it really heightens you as a very strategic person within your organization and not just the event deliverer. So I think it's really, really important that we actually make time for ourselves and to actually analyze this data. So the big excuse we always hear is this thing about time. And I've got to say, I am totally guilty of it. But you know, we recently did a big piece of analysing data across the 3 events that we did, and we found out different topics were of more interest for different levels of people and age groups. So we've started creating our programme so it would be different for this year. But I think one of the things that I was sort of like told by a group, we were actually in Singapore last week at a leadership supper, and there was a lovely lady from Netflix, and she said, we consider data our biggest benefit. You know, like, this is the biggest thing we have. We own data. And she said one thing that they do, they allow themselves half a day after their major events to actually sit down with the team, work through, okay, logistically what we should be doing, but actually to analyze the data to see where people are going. So it's really interesting. The best thing she actually did was actually, they do a thing called a phone spa, where they leave the basic phone at the front door or the registration desk, and they all sit and just have no phones in front of them, which is wonderful. So look, I have to ask you, what is your biggest barrier to actually analysing your data? And you know, it's no shame, just be honest. And I think this will be coming up on screen now. I think, Lawrence, have we got it there? Is it happening?
I can see it in front of us. So yeah, let's see your responses, everyone. What's the real reason you're not using data? You can get to the polls on the right side of your screen, just the same spot as where all the chat and Q&A is. Yeah, let's see what answers you all have. You can see them starting to come in.
Fantastic. Any interesting ones coming in so far, Lawrence?
It's an even split between no time, like you suggested, no tools, and no idea how to collate. We haven't got any responses yet from no interest from leadership, and no one's asking us to leave them alone, which is also quite nice.
Leave me alone. That is so, you know, this thing about time and also the analysis. So I think I'll move on to this later, but one of the things I think that's so interesting about this on time. So I was shown the best trick on ChatGPT. I know everyone talks about it, but literally they've got this feature now. I have got a paid version, so I think it's like 18 quid or something. But basically you can tell it to analyze different data sets. So I can say, when I've got my registration and details coming through, I upload my CSV file, which I get from Cvent. I then basically analyze the age group and maybe a topic or location or whatever, and it comes back, AI comes back, and it actually gives me that information. I think, you know, it's just so easy to do this, and I think that's why this topic's become even more important to us at ICE, is because I think I used to think I needed a data scientist or I needed someone. I went, oh God, I haven't got enough time to do this. But actually allowing enough time to just be able to do it on ChatGPT, this interesting information you pull out is mind blowing. I don't know if you do that with your data, Lawrence.
Yeah, it's definitely a case where there's a question of where do you start? You know, how do you decide what to prioritize when it comes to the data? I can see we've got majority responses now say no idea how to collate, and I think that probably does align with just where do we even start to actually you know, make the most of the data that's out there.
Yeah.
If you are going to use AI, what direction do you take that in so that you can really you know, make a great outcome from that data?
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things would actually be to, we'll come on to this in a moment, but that thing about analysing what the original objective was and what the measurement tool you were going to do. But let's go on to that in a few moments, if that's okay, Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone, for doing that. That's wonderful. And I meant to say, anyone who wants to ask a question in the chat, just anytime, and Lawrence and me will be able to answer them, which would be wonderful. So look, I love this. I love a comfy blanket. I love sitting on my sofa and everything else. But one of the things that came out from the research we did when we were going, right, okay, what could be the ROI? There's various things we keep telling ourselves lies about. And I've done this, so I'm putting my hands up so, you all know. So I always go, I know my audience. I know my audience. Don't worry, Lawrence, I know them. But you don't. Sometimes you know who's registered, obviously, but you don't know who's paid attention. So how do you actually go about doing that? And we'll come on to that in a few moments. We then have, I always say, we measure ROI. But most people measure ROI like measure happiness, like some vaguely, and, but only when asked, how do you actually do that? How do you actually look at data to measure that kind of metric? And then, sort of like I always say, our events are really successful, but why? Why are they successful? What could we do to make them better? And I think with data, we can make them better. And one of the things I know someone was coming back with, like post-event questionnaires, is just you're talking to an echo chamber because the people that you really, they love you already and everything else. And one of the things someone suggested was doing those airport stands, like, are you happy? How happy are you with our service, that you get in airports? So we're going to introduce those at ICE, which I think would be quite fun. But it's trying to get a gauge on getting the non-engaged people to get engaged with you. But we can talk about that in more detail. So one of the things I think is really interesting, and this came out from the ICE research as well, is that, it wasn't magic, it was metrics. And this really, really sums it up. So basically, when one of our people were sort of explaining what they meant by ROI and everything else, they basically decided the one thing that they were going to do and compare against, because I think data is really important, you compare it against each other, is that they decided they were going to look at the data from the scanning things, when you could do those on-site scanning things, and look at registration. They basically looked at the content, the scanning and the registration and the profile of the person coming along. And they actually reconstructed their content for the following year. And they saw a 23% uplift of their attendees. And it was a paying event. So it really was amazing what they achieved. And I always say it wasn't magic, or they say it wasn't magic, it was metrics, which I think was a really smart way of doing that. So look, let's think of some power moves that we could actually think about where we use data in a creative way. So basically, I mentioned this earlier on, Lawrence, is that we basically had a lot of our events we start at the end. What would you want the outcome to be? So on site at ICE this year in July, we want the outcome to be that people leave and complete the annual benchmarking research, not just because it's Cvent, but because we want to know what their problems are, what their challenges are. And, can't be it team sizes, the average team size, the spend on budgets and things like that. We want to know that information. So that's what our end game is. So we're going to basically do lots of things and put in place kind of activations to get people completing the research on site. We're actually going to give them some time to actually complete it. And that's kind of like my one kind of a power move that I'm going to do to make sure I've got something great coming out of ICE for this year. And then basically make the event visible. So when we basically talk about this, so we use the Cvent platform. We can get graphs off the Cvent platform. Do we use those graphs in any purposeful way? So one of the things that we want to do is get that information. We're going to, as I mentioned earlier on, feed that into AI, my little lovely AI tool, and do some comparison. But that to me is such a simple thing for us to do. And I've got the data. why not use it? And then I'm going to make it visible. So I'm going to share that with the audience so that they can actually see what the average spend is on events, where people are planning to hold events. So it'll be useful data for everyone to use and, look after. So the big thing also is that, use tech with purpose. So the thing I obviously mentioned about AI, you don't need it to be shiny and flashy and expensive. You just look at the detail and you go, right, okay, what can I achieve with the tools around? So, we do things like campfires on site. So the one things that we're using is Otter AI around those campfires, so we can capture what people say, which means we then can produce white papers, which then means we have more content going forward. So I think using tech with purpose, with all the great technology out there, such as Cvent, you've got so many opportunities to stand out and look amazing within your organizations. So one of the things that I also try and do is this thing about when we get fees. We did an event in March in Belfast. So we have shared with the audience the answers to the questionnaire that was sent out. Now, usually you do it to sell more sponsors in or whatever. We've actually shared it with the audience so that they can share back to their stakeholders. Well, I've been in a room with 33% being X or Y, etc. So that thing about doing simple things, that gives you a lot of power. So look, we are on to our next little poll now. Let's see if I can move it forward. So this one, how often do you dive into your post-event data? So come on, we'll give everyone a few moments on this, Lawrence.
Yep, don't be shy.
The great thing is nobody can see anyone's names, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, what we want to see is the general sentiment in the audience. Oh wow, we are seeing a strong showing of every time so far.
Very good.
That's what we want to see.
Very good. And so I'd love it to be a two-way conversation, but that thing about how you're using that data, are you using it to just report back on straight data? Are you analysing it? How are you actually analysing? I think that would be so. In fact, Cvent, Lawrence, do you do a lot of analysis on?
Yeah. In one aspect is actually poll data, because these kind of insights we can really carry over into future session content. A question could be, what do you want to discuss when we all come together at our next small meeting? And that can really shape the agenda from a content standpoint. But yeah, lots of different ways in which the data can really inform decision making, depending on the goals.
When you're doing your big event, your Cvent Connecting, there's so much data there. Have you got a data analyst, or are you able, as the marketing team or lead generation team, go in and analyze it? Who does that work?
Yeah, it really is a collaboration. We have individuals who are dedicated to reporting, and then they can share around the insights. And then it's a collaboration with leadership to then take those insights, as well as peers in marketing, so we can really shape what the next year would look like. So one example, there's data based on where people are spending their time at the event. We've got RFID scanners, and that can help to inform how much of an investment we put towards per certain locations in the venue, and what's the footfall. We can really get that kind of data. What kind of sessions are of most interest? So that can dictate, maybe we need to make sure that we've got several streams to avoid clashes on a certain topic. There's a lot of just consideration that comes from that kind of analysis as well.
Yeah, and that analysis that you do across the board, do you share that with the team, the whole of the team, the marketing comms team and everyone?
Yeah, it's really useful for that to be known across the marketing org, because there are so many different teams in marketing, and to be honest, across other departments too, that are influenced by that kind of data. How do we prioritize our communications? What kind of, for sales, what kind of messages are most relevant to our customers and our prospects? So it's definitely not contained to a small team.
Fantastic, wonderful. Actually, I had a lovely story with who was it, Siemens, and I think Philips do it as well. You know, I expect a lot of our audience does it, but on their stand at these big expos that they go in Germany, etc., they actually have heat maps and touch maps around their stand, and that evening they change their stand around to actually reflect in real time what products, or I need to push that product to the front of the stand or the back of the stand. So they actually get real-time data and they analyze it after during the event. And I think that's quite an interesting thing that they've managed to do as well.
Yeah.
Can I ask? Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, yeah, so I can still see it. We've got every time for how often we use data post-event in the lead. There's a bit of a split in terms of couple saying rarely. Got a response here saying only when forced. So there's a bit of a split. It's reassuring to see that it's every time. But like you say, there is another level to just how is the data being used, which is also very important.
Yeah, no, and also that thing about sharing it out to the audience as well. I think sometimes people get scared of their competitors, and you just go, no, come on, sharing data. And I think one of the things we don't do enough of in the events world, and we have to put our hands up as well, is that sharing like benchmarks. Like, in HubSpot, you can go, okay, I've got a 19% open rate on average compared to other companies. That is really great. But in events, there's a thing that I'd love to do, and if anyone can tell me where I can find this, it would be wonderful. Is actually, when people register for events, it's free of charge, and the drop-off rate. And it'd be great to do some kind of analysis across dropout rate across days of the week, because I think Monday is not used that much because everyone thinks, everyone's too sleepy to do something on Monday. But you'd get great venue rates if you did it on a Monday, and we're all not bold enough to do it sometimes. And I think that kind of data would be really, really interesting to share. But anyway, that's a lovely idea, isn't it?
Agreed.
Okay, so basically, it sounds as if we don't really need to say, what happens when you prioritize insights. But, we know that if you know these insights, if you know what's going on with your data and your event, you stop chasing your tail going, I must do this, I must do that, because you've got the data to back it up. You can speak the stakeholders' language. And I think this is such a crucial thing to make events stand out as a proper marketing mechanism to move things forward. You also find out what really matters to your audience when you find out data. You can change things to make sure you're meeting the goals, especially when there's so much competition often to attend events. And ultimately, you become not just an event person, you become an event strategist. I know in the UK, a lot of people consider themselves strategists. I think we need to escalate that into the data things being backed up with data as well. So I am coming to the end now, which is very, very bit too quick, I think, maybe, but never mind. But our one call to action. So obviously, after listening to today's conversation, is write one thing down, one metric that you're going to do at your next event. Just one, and basically commit to it, and then basically follow it through and share it with your team, and then share it post-event with the team, so that you actually feel you're moving forward. Great ideas don't just start with inspiration, they start with insight. Thank you very much, Lawrence. And I suppose it's any questions.
Yeah, well, it's now time for our live Q&A. So if there are any questions that you would like to submit, it is not too late. And we can take those based on what you put into the Q&A section on the right of your screen. I see we have received a few questions already, so I'm going to take a look at those. So let's start with this one here. How do I convince leadership to care about event data beyond attendance numbers?
Okay, so this is a really interesting one. So when you start with your event that you have, and you've set your objectives and everything else, had you started with getting the stakeholder actually involved with that decision, that measurement piece? Because once they are involved with measuring right from the beginning, and it won't necessarily be numbers, it will actually be about emotion or, you know, call to actions, etc. And I think that's where the data can actually help us move beyond where we are now. And one of the things I'd love to say is that we have so many people saying events, people think it's so emotional, it's lovely. But I think one of the things that they always come up against is, I can't measure it because the salespeople don't put the stuff into the database. So if we could convince leadership, which basically then gets involved with the sales team, saying, almost incentivizing the sales team to say, when you're at that event, basically measure and try and get this together, then basically I think it'd be really interesting. So I think getting leadership involved straight away, finding out what they actually want, would actually be a brilliant thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, that can really help with buy-in, can't it? Just having leadership as an ally for when you're trying to demonstrate why certain priorities are priorities, and just having them on your side.
Yeah, and you know, from a sales team point of view, is that I often think, is there any way we can incentivize, as maybe put a little bit of our event budget behind it, even if it's a box of chocolates or something, but, you know, to actually get the sales team or the, you know, leadership team to actually input data into the CRM against that, you know, organization. I think that would really, really help beyond belief.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's go for our next question. So, where do I start with event data without budget or analyst support?
Well, without budget, I think it comes back. It comes back to the, I think AI, you know, I keep saying it during this conversation, but AI does, because, you know, as ICE, we do not have big budgets. We are a very small organization. But whenever I've done this, when I've been like working for a big exhibition company, you usually need an analyst or someone to actually help you. But this is, the AI piece now is helping us translate conversations. So I don't think you need a massive analyst team unless you want a proper piece of research like the benchmarking research. But you actually just, if you actually just use the technology that's around us. I don't know if Cvent's got any AI technology.
It's actually woven through a lot of our range of solutions. It's not really like this is the AI. I mean, we actually do have that too, but it's much more when it comes to registration, when it comes to mobile app. So, for example, when an attendee opens up their app, they've got a personalized experience. So it's that kind of thing where AI is really coming into that. But in terms of data, there actually is predictive graphing based on how other events are tracking in terms of attendance numbers at a certain point in promotion and delivery, that you can just estimate where you'll be a week from now and 2 weeks from now. That's been something that's been in development on the Cvent side. So yeah, it's also bleeding into data as well when it comes to AI.
Yeah, no, and you know, it comes back to that thing about data is the key to everything. We all have data. I know, you know, within the life science sector, you know, new discoveries are being found because computers are now powerful enough to translate the data. And I think with us as event planners, we're not even touching the analysis of where we could go with the data we collect. So one thing we're doing is, an obvious thing is to collect age group. Now, we never do that because is that too personal? But actually, why not? You know, like, it's not assigned, you know, we don't know that age group and everything else. So it's really interesting, some of the stuff that you can bring out and, you know, make sure that you're creating the right information and data coming out of stuff going forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, data can really enable you to personalize. So that has a massive impact. So yeah, as long as you're respecting any data privacy concerns and just, you know, you're only using data in a way that actually helps everyone, is actually good for the attendee, then yeah, there's lots of opportunity there.
So there's a really just before, sorry, is that there's a really interesting thing. So in ICE this year in London, we're going to have those facial those facial cameras that judge your mood. So it won't recognize you, it won't put your name to it, but it actually will judge your mood. But what we've had to do is that with that technology, half the audience will have that facial recognition stuff going on, and half won't, for those that don't like the technology. And I think that's really interesting, seeing how that works this year as well. I know in Germany it was, I said, come on, let's do it, and they just went, no. And I said, we're not collecting your name and face. It's facial expressions. No. And it'd be really interesting to see if it ever takes off in Germany. So we'll watch this.
I mean, that's personalization right there, isn't it? Giving people that tailored experience on whether, on what they're actually happy to participate in. So
and also, from us, we'll be able to judge whether the speaker's going down well. So obviously there's always a bit of that, isn't there? But it's so interesting. You just go, right, okay, this could change the way we choose speakers and things like that. Wouldn't it be great if you could publish that information? But anyway, that's another conversation altogether.
And we've got another question here. So let's go to this one. We have the data, but no one uses it. How do I change that culture?
Okay, so one of the things that I know a lot of the larger corporates are doing, when they've got their stakeholders, basically, when the event's been created, they've got stakeholders agreeing what they're basically doing and they want to achieve out of it. They then present on a PowerPoint slide, actually the results of that information. So any data that they've collected on site, they actually make time. And this, I know everyone goes, I'm too busy, I can't do it, but it's similar to what I was saying earlier on about Netflix. Making time to actually analyze what the event's done and what's it's achieved for the business is really important. And that's how I would change culture, is to just to say this is important, because events always basically go, no, it's lovely, it was wonderful and everything else. And you go, no, actually, take us seriously. So if you're running a marketing campaign, a LinkedIn marketing campaign, they would expect to see impressions, click-throughs, etc. So why don't we have the same for events? So I think making time in the stakeholders' diary to do that, to show the data results and also the information collected, is crucial. And you just have to be bossy.
That can really protect you as an event marketer too, because if there is then a sentiment from, for example, sales that, oh, we don't need to do this event, or this isn't necessary to host, you have the data to back up why you do need to, why it actually really does have an impact on the business. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it comes back to that, looking more strategic within the business. I think when budgets are really tight, which they obviously are at the moment, grabbing that data and everything else is so important for us to be seen as a sector rather than just a bolt-on idea. Oh, it's lovely. We proved during COVID how important events were, but we now, if we suddenly come surging out of it and say, and here's the data that backs it up, I think we could really stand out with our audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got another question here, which probably more for me actually. So does your app allow the organizer to communicate all year round, or is it just active at each event? So yeah, great question. It actually really depends on how you set things up. It can definitely be a case of communicating all year round. You can have an event set up which has lots of different sessions, and those sessions can be on different dates across the year. So you actually got it separated out in that way, and that event just keeps on rolling on. With different promotions relating to that. But also, yeah, you can have email communications, which are really very much far beyond the event, and it's just dependent on how you set things up. Likewise, there's Events Plus, which is sort of the Netflix for Cvent software, really, where you can have it so on-demand content from an event is available long after the event is finished. So you've really got that all year round engagement right through to if you have a next annual event, say. So yeah, lots of personalized options there, I'd say.
Fantastic. I have to look into that. That's really interesting. It is, that thing with the data piece is that when you basically decide to actually do an event and create the event, that thing about what should we do, how long should be the sessions and everything else of what we're doing, we should be collecting that as an industry. Our sessions are usually 10, 15 minutes now. Should they be longer for webinars because people have got more time? So I think there's lots of interesting things that we could find out and share. Imagine doing that. That would be lovely. I'd love to share all the stuff. We should start doing it, shouldn't we? Just on our platform, just share all the information we find out from people.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Well, I can't see any other questions. So that brings us towards the end of the webinar. I did just want to mention, if you would like to earn a $100 Amazon gift card, you can sign up to complete a demo of us. And all you need to do, pretty much, is just click the button that will pop up at the bottom of your screen, or if you're watching this recording, click the button in our follow-up email. And yeah, a successfully completed demo would mean you get that Amazon gift card. Now, any recipients outside of the US, that gift card can be converted from $100 USD to another currency available of your choosing. So yeah, if you want to have a chat to anyone in our team, yeah, go ahead and do that for a gift voucher. And that is a wrap. That's the end of our webinar today. And yeah, if you've got any other questions, please reach out to us at webinars@cvent.com. And we'll also be sticking around a bit just on chat here if you've got any other questions, as we turn off our cameras. But yeah, no, Anita, thank you again for joining us. I think this is a really great conversation. And yeah, we'll see you all next time.
Thank you very much.